Hello everyone, I hope you're all having a wonderful night tonight. This is Akiziel here, and tonight I'll be reacting to Star Wars vs. Warhammer 40K Episode 44, The Light Flickers Part 2 by AFanWithTooMuchTime. This is part 3 of my reaction to it, because it's a very long video. And once again, I highly recommend that if you're not already subscribed to AFanWithTooMuchTime, you should definitely subscribe to him and like the original video. Show him some love. He works very hard on these, as you can tell from the quality. And without further ado, let's see what the battle between Palpatine and Tara Wilder has in store for us. Where it ended off last time involved the two of them having been quite the force battle, literally twisting the environment around them as they clashed. And must say, it has been quite interesting. In well, now Legends, but used to just be called X-Men Universe, there were cases of Palpatine conjuring up force lightning storms powerful enough to destroy entire fleets. Meanwhile, the Psykers of the Imperium of Man are much stronger in this than they are in their home setting, because, well, the warp is much calmer, so they don't need to be as careful about using their psychic powers, or concentrate so much on not being noticed by the hordes of demons who would be attracted to them.
The dark contest only intensified as Ayla's eyes closed, the dynamic functioning as though the contestants, subtly relieved from the pressure of the stage, were now free to unleash their most profane performances in the absence of an audience. The very fabric of the immaterial realm, itself composed of a tapestry woven with the stuff of souls and unfathomable powers, oscillated like a disturbed sea, churned in the wake of the Dark Lord and the Lord Inquisitor's confrontation. Two battles waged simultaneously, a war fought by flesh. Here, atop the twisting tower rising from the corpse head of Axum, and a war of minds and spirits projected onto the sea of souls like a foul, shared nightmare. But this was no dream, and the consequences of their ephemeral duel were by far the most relevant between the two. Tar's body collected his weapons, Sidious's mortal form revealing his twin sabers once more, throwing all they had at one another, launching themselves like foul lances, each angling for the destruction of the other. After images blurred the air as their speed and ferocity intensified, the gathering force of their dire contest signaling to all who could hear by emanating thunder in the aftermath of each clash. Storm winds sang and swirled around them, churned into existence by their movements, and, more than anything else, their eldritch teachings, one colliding with the other. And yet, in spite of the great skill of their martial dance, it was not in the material world where the heart of their private war was waged. Indeed, the magnificent skill they displayed in swordplay was but the physical shadow cast by their more intense battle. A duel which was conducted in the invisible, roiling tides of the Sea of Souls. A sea they were fast befouling with their ever-burgeoning displays of black might and forbidden knowledge. It was into this realm that the Inquisitor funneled most of his power, for it was within the warp that his soul was strongest, especially without an ever-present horde of daemons waiting to prey upon him. Tarweiler's metaphysical essence radiated out from him like the glow of a dark, malevolent star, a power he tamed and channeled, his spiritual avatar becoming the semblance of a writhing serpent. its body swelling and sprouting limbs until he was a draconic, many-armed monstrosity, each hand wielding an eldritch artifact, representations and manifestations of dark desires and hidden fears he hardly dared to articulate, even to himself. Across from him, upon the warped battlefield presented by the netherworld of the Force, the spectral form of the dark Jedi sorcerer counterpoised Wyler's obvious might with a display of mystique. Far from a single, solid shape, the dark Jedi Master manifested himself as an ephemeral wraith of shadow, shrouded in an impenetrable mist of dense illusions. As Tar made to approach, an ethereal cascade of spiritual replicas erupted into existence from the body of the strange Republic warlock, sprouting like dark flowers blooming forth in time-lapse. The countless clones surrounded Wyler's avatar in a labyrinthian forest of deception, and he lashed out through them. Immediately he could see they were insubstantial things, hardly worth the strength he put into striking them. Tar, focused, tried to narrow his view, to ferret out the black specter which held the true location of the soul he wished to sunder. Yet, no sooner had he disregarded the threat of the replicas than he found himself under attack from a torrent of sorceress assaults. Blasted with warp lightning, the many-armed monster that was Tar Wyler thrashed, destroying several surrounding clones, but the illusions only laughed at his efforts. Rage spilled into Tar Wyler like an insidious internal bleed, the powerful psyker recoiling from the scalding power which had been thrown into him. These cruel phantoms were designed to disorient, their laughter and maddening whispers aimed to deceive and distract Tar Wyler, and all the while, he remained the target of an unseen fusillade of psychic daggers, each sparking blade hidden among the myriad false forms which the bizarre Jedi Master had conjured. The psychic terrain around Wyler had become a treacherous maze, and despite how powerfully or skillfully he cast out the net of his perceptions, he could not detect the true Dark Lord from the many facsimiles, each sorcerous phantom lashing out, seeking to strike at his very soul. The vast majority were far too impotent to do anything but appear hostile, but among them, the true Dark Jedi danced, diving in like an opportunistic scavenger at every presented opening. Strike after strike, the Imperial Inquisitor began to feel beleaguered, encircled by a suffocating snare of illusions which negated his superior strength by enabling the Dark Lord to avoid a direct confrontation with it.
So Sidious is fighting like an Eldar. or avoiding his opponent and where they're strong, striking at them where they're vulnerable, using guile, misdirection, and moving swiftly to keep their opponent off balance.
The eldritch trickery of the vile sorcerer twisted the warp around them, and as Tar's many arms rose and fell, chopping and cleaving at the army of illusions, he found that the actual foe he faced had made himself as mercurial and elusive as a wisp of smoke caught in a gale. Enough! Thought Tar Wyler, fortifying his resolve and drawing in his many limbs. His psychic avatar dripped with a rage that bordered on insanity, ashamed to be so tested and confounded by a weakling of the Republic. If this Dark Lord of the Jedi sought to bewilder him and confound him into defeat, then Wyler would answer those deceptions with a calamity of his own. He braced, his form swelling as the army of fell, hissing ghosts around him stabbed and scorched him, ignoring the real damage amidst all of the illusions as he reached up with all of his many arms. The deceptive sorcerer sought to make the Imperial lose himself in a maze of mind traps and snares. But Tar categorically refused to play that kind of game, exhaling a torrent of power into the space around himself. Flexing his colossal psychic strength, he unleashed his raw, unbridled power into the warp. His avatar, now a towering colossus, opened each hand it had raised, dropping every weapon it had sought to wield, and from its open palms blasted prismatic torrents of arcane fire. The power of his mind soul gushed out like maddening, malevolent rivers of energy, churning the spirit sea around them into a boiling tempest. The very flesh of the force itself convulsed under the assault, the fabric of the barrier between the material and immaterial tearing open to reveal rifts that bled into the sky above.
You know, by the sounds of it, I honestly would not be surprised they end up triggering in a warp storm with this, but also their battle as it's going on is kind of make me think back to the War in Heaven then, and how the warp was before then supposed to have been a peaceful, tranquil place, and the use of its energies in warfare, as well as all the suffering and death that occurred during the War in Heaven, twisted it into the hellscape that most people in 40K are familiar with. I have a feeling that that's what's going to happen due to the events on Axum. Granted, it's already kind of been foreshadowed with some of the stuff that started happening already. But I mean, like, proper, like, demons manifesting and stuff like that might happen because of this. Or at least that's the impression I get.
Kaleidoscope storm of ever-changing, otherworldly colors. As the warp roiled and bubbled under Wyler's truly titanic expression of power, a wave of it swept out from him. The false replicas of the black-robed sorcerer disintegrating as it passed through them. Each spectral phantom burst into a rain of ephemeral ashes. Obliterated by the cascading tsunami of psychic force Tar was pushing out. Within moments, the labyrinth of shadowy deceptions was no more, leaving only the very real Witch Lord in its wake, his wraith-like form exposed amidst the settling warp. Inquisitor Tar Wyler inhaled the heady ether of the spirit world, his avatar suddenly shrouded in billowing plumes of obsidian smoke. The form of the black-clad sorcerer raised his shadowy hands, casting forth twin branching columns of force lightning. The obsidian shroud of smoke caught the reaching, scratching claws of the rare witch's ruinous power. The lightning intermingling with the black clouds, but failing to reach the man behind them. The grin on Wyler's serpentine lips flared wide as he burst through the smoke and sparking powers of the Dark Lord, leaping towards the unusual Jedi, arms outstretched and prepared to flay him as the sorcerer stood before the encroaching form of the Inquisitor's avatar. The Dark Lord was a mere shadow against the stormy backdrop of the warp, and yet that shadow almost gave Tar pause, if for no other reason than from how inexplicably and relentlessly vivid it seemed to be. The Inquisitor's opponent was so dark, so solid, that he seemed a void, one Tar began to doubt his attacks could reach. The suspicion proved itself prophecy as Wyler lashed out wildly, his claws and weapons failing to scratch the sorcerer, for it was not the Witchling Lord that he was attacking. Serpent eyes almost crossing, the demonic shape that Tar Wyler had taken for his own moved to the left and realized that he had been fooled. The potent sorcerer having literally twisted the backdrop of the warp to cast his own silhouette upon the horizon, and into it he had fled and vanished. Tar roared, quaking the spirit realm, knowing that the perfidious sorcerer remained near, a fact proven by their still ongoing physical contest. casting soul-born eyes across the shifting, cloud-like landscape which surrounded him. Tar desperately sought the dark essence of the Witch Lord, but as before, he could not find it before it was ready to strike again, emerging from his own shadow to lance a blade of lightning through his body, an act Tar repaid.
And this is the skill of the man who was able to disguise his presence from the entire Jedi Order, while being on the same planet as them, and in many cases being in the same room as several of their masters.
Aid by smashing his colossal fists into his own shadow. But by then, the Dark Lord had vanished back into it and was gone. Time and time again, Tar was finding his power and techniques blunted by the endless diversions. The Republic Warlock was able to place between himself and the Inquisitor. Grimacing with resolve, Tarweiler's monstrous spirit form reared, psychic membranes of the netherworld rupturing as he did, clouds exploding into flame and changing colors all about him. This Jedi thing thought he could hide in the Inquisitor's own shadow? Tar could see the logic, for the darkness the Imperial harbored was the equal of any light within the Imperium he served, and that served him. So he, in place of reaching in to root him out, destroyed the shadow utterly, roaring with a mind throat wide enough to swallow several men whole as he burst into radiance. His shadow snuffed as he became the center of his own glow. The Dark Lord was caught by the sudden change, thrown roughly from the once shade of Tarweiler's heart, and cast tumbling through the warped space their souls occupied. The sorcerer landed roughly, rolling, body expanding, form shifting into an arachnoid shape. His spectral appendages reaching out to right himself, weaving crimson webs of devious complexity as he leapt and tumbled 8 legs.
How fitting that he takes a spider as his avatar, given all the webs of intrigue and deception Palpatine is responsible for.
In constant motion. To Weiler's surprise, the warp seemed to obey him, the tumultuous energy curling and spiraling in resonance with each thread the transformed Witch Lord wove. "You'll not catch me in your traps twice!" snarled Tar, his avatar form fluctuating, once a monster, then a dragon, then an amorphous cloud of teeth and jaws and flaring eyes. In his new, storm-like form, he unleashed a hurricane of screaming black bolts towards the deceptive web that was, even then, being wrapped to surround the Inquisitor. The sky
Doombolts?
was seared with bursts of undulating warp energy as Tarweiler sought to express the extremity of his power once more, throwing out attacks in every direction. The Midnight Sorcerer, hidden once more, smirked within the shadows, shrouding his soul, which lounged easily within, bearing little fear and no trepidation as he watched on. His webs folded inward like a crimson collapsing star, catching and swallowing the doom bolts and turning them into shimmering dust and bright blue warp fire. The insidious strands were now revealed to be twice as numerous as the Inquisitor had expected. For, paired with every glowing crimson web, had been a hidden thread, invisible in the light cast out by Tarweiler's shadow-eating brilliance. The rending webs closed, entrapping the Inquisitor, using his own strength, his own warp might, to crush and destroy him. Yeah.
You know, there's something fitting about the fact that this image reminds me of Fulgrim, and how prideful Tarweiler has shown himself to be at several times.
Tarweiler was no novice, nor even a master. He was a prodigy, born to walk the warp, and sweating blood from a myriad of inhuman eyes, the Inquisitor managed to counter his own previous power with something greater. Eyes still bleeding radiant blood, each one growing wider and brighter every moment. Tarweiler became a spinning star of bladed light and utter brilliance. Countless streams of silver, solar radiance pouring out from him in cascades which collided with the glowing walls of eldritch webs. Those brilliant rivers clashed and screeched against the enclosure of crimson light that the Sorcerer Lord had set upon him. The powers resisted each other, Tar preventing himself from being unmade by the trick, but still held in place, pinned like a superheated ball of silvered steel upon wraithbone webs. The witch's voice echoed out as the Inquisitor struggled, words forming from the bleak array of warp shadows that surrounded them.
Inquisitor, your strength is impressive, but it becomes your weakness when you wield it so brutally. And worse, it makes you predictable. What good is light when you are so bright that you are blinded by it?
Mocked the Dark Master of the Jedi, braying his words like a demon hidden in the mists of Tar's own mind.
You know, it also makes sense considering that Fan has mentioned a couple times now just how angry Tarweiler is getting in response to some of the stuff that Sidious is doing. And, well, while anger can certainly be helpful at times, it really does show how much Tarweiler is in many ways relying on essentially brute force just to get his way. Because ideally in a fight, you want to keep a cool head.
Tarweiler roared his response once more, his bladed sun avatar quaking with the sound. The wretched heretic smirked, knowing that he had the Inquisitor in a snare that would cost him much to escape, no matter how he raged. He knew this, until Tar made him know differently. The bellow let loose by the Inquisitor did not end, it only magnified, increased, and stretched out. The warp trembled. The dark side squealed like a rabid beast suddenly struck. And the Dark Master felt his smile dry out and die on his fanged lips as the bladed radiance of the sword sun Tarweiler had become grew bright and brighter. Its light and touch composed of countless, ephemeral and invisible silver razors. Lifting his right arm to shield himself, the sorcerer hissed and fell back and away, shreds torn from his form before he could slink into darkness. Tar's expression of power soared, reversing the snare's strength and breaking it. The webs shattering like blood-colored glass threads, the silver sun expanding before fading, revealing Tarweiler not as a monster, a star, or even the man he appeared to be in the flesh, but as the man he actually was. His masks torn away by the breadth of his struggle, Tar heaved breaths into his chest and scowled, lines drawing deeply across the natural human visage of his ordinary face. Anger welled up in the Inquisitor like blood pooling in his heart, realizing that each strike made by the dueling sorcerer was a calculated mockery, a lesson intended to teach him futility. The heretical Jedi was able to hide his presence in the warp so well that it was blatantly shocking. For while Tar had faced more powerful psychic entities before, the list was not extensive, and this kind of power should not have been the kind that could be casually hidden. This Blasphemous psyker. Felt like he should be weaker than Tar in every way, and yet, through the odd breadth of his technique and the strange way in which the witch interacted with the Force, the Dark Lord had not only been able to survive, but to truly contend with him. Standing before one another, physical bodies and souls met and overlaid. Tar snarled hideously at the sorcerer, who stood still and straight, face shadowed and unreadable, with an incantation that spat in the face of both the warp and the laws of real space. Tar Weiler began to speak, raising his hands.
As it has been said, the dark side is a path to abilities that some may consider unnatural. Which also does fit in quite well with fans' theory about there being two dark sides, and one of them being the flip side of the light side as part of the natural order, and the other being a representation of things that are unnatural. But also, since he mentioned earlier how Tar's masks worked away, I assume then that his sharp tooth with Voldemort-looking visage that he usually parades around in is something akin to the Force illusion that Sidious normally uses to disguise himself, because I have heard that how he looked after the whole battle with Windu, that was not actually a result of injuries from his lightning being deflected onto him. That was just how he normally looks, and that how most people saw him in the prequels as Palpatine. Was an illusion he cast so that he appears a kindly old man.
Into a spread-fingered aquila over his chest. Libera Diabolis, Imperius Ignis. His voice resonated through the warped reality they themselves were twisting, his words tearing the scant tranquility asunder like the last scream of a Drukhari slave echoing into nothing. The phantom threads of the spirit world convulsed as a cavorting maelstrom of black flames surged into life, bursting from the cloudy, mostly shrouded ground they seemed to stand upon. The torrents rushed up, a perfect circle around the Inquisitor, rocketing into the sky and arcing down, honing in on the Republic Warlock with cataclysmic intent. The Dark Lord, exuding an air of indomitable arrogance, thrust out his clawed hands, waving them back and forth as he rasped an incantation in the gravelly tones of Katat.
Huzrat Zol Ta'alas Manuta, Nuta Falan Ra.
He hissed, forming an arcane triangle with a sharp flick of his wrists, hands coming together. The flames recoiled and metamorphized into a vibrant tempest of crackling lightning, arcing menacingly back towards its creator.
The dark side's poetry is written into every shadow you wish to bend to yourself. And of the two of us, only one is the Dark Lord.
The Witch Lord taunted, reveling in the symphony of Dunmok, a song he continued to sing. But Tar was far from cowed, lines creasing his human face. Folding his hands over his chest in a proper, close-fingered aquila, he began to chant hastily. Salvatre ternum impersene! Vestre lumine protagum! As he finished speaking, he knelt down and bowed his head, a halo of resplendent light searing into life over him, and then expanding violently and rapidly around him, barely shielding the Inquisitor from the onslaught of rechanneled warp energy. It was a precarious barrier, trembling under the malevolent craftsmanship of the Republic Warlock's magic, and Tar's own subverted power. Gritting his teeth, his normally black eyes alight with the hues of red and yellow, Tar's form undulated wildly, strained, but ultimately emerged unharmed for the most part. He snapped his hands forward, forming esoteric symbols between his fingers, moving them precisely through the air. "Your words tire me, Jedi!" Tar yelled, boiling with warp-infused wrath. He opened his mouth and began to speak, unleashing another potent expression of his stolen sorceries.
It's going to be interesting when they realize is that Palpatine is no Jedi, and the sorts of things that the Sith do.
Demonis Casa! Armana Senatora Aeternus Tenebrissa! He left his mouth open after the last syllable left his lips, and from his gaping maw erupted long arms, ending in spindly fingered hands. They reached down, grabbing his face and shoulders and using them as leverage to pull themselves entirely free of his mouth and throat. Each shadowy, streaming monstrosity lurching towards the awed Jedi, each becoming bolts of pure warp energy as they did, each screaming missile a microcosm of impending soul annihilation. Remaining unflinchingly calm, the Archwitch raised his hands, geometric gestures forming between them. In the archaic Balk tongue, the voice of the Shadow Masters and Chaos Callers, he began to direct the world.
Gatok oslictos in la siratatat,
he said, his hands spinning intricate sigils in the air more and more rapidly, and as he did, time seemed to move more and more slowly. Becoming sluggish in the air, the missiles revealed their profane shapes more distinctly as they were brought to a near halt by the sorcerer and his continuous chanting. His words never letting up, he pointed to one, and then to another, and then pointed to a place in the air. Time resumed in full for those two missiles, but they veered away from him, both flying through the same point in the air at the same time and colliding. The two living warp weapons destroyed each other in the collision, and soon, so too did all of the others as the Dark Lord, chanting all the while, pointed at more of them and then sent them flying into different places around him in the air. The last one, which had no partner to collide with, he chose to absorb, and with dark artistry, the Witch Lord melded the screaming pseudo-spirit into a spiraling vortex of chaotic energy between his palms, toying with it like one might with a trained mouse. The vastly powerful sorcerer grinned malevolently at the power before gripping it with a sudden turn of his wrist and snuffing it out. Impressive, Tar Weiler admitted, his eyes locking on to the Witch Lord's own, which shimmered with a molten, malevolent luster. I had no idea that your republic held such masters of the warp within it. You are nothing like the other Jedi. Even their mightiest could not have matched me like this. The Inquisitor elaborated, chest heaving as he took deep, steadying breaths. The Dark Lord's face twitched at the words. Standing across from him, though he took in the praise readily, his hidden existence making the recognition of his skill and power a rare enough thing, especially among other users of the dark side of the Force. That said, he took no pleasure in being conflated with the Jedi.
Inquisitor Wyler, your power swells like a raging storm, a near-elemental force, and you do not wield it without skill or training. But your former masters have failed you. Your potential remains unrefined. It could be so much more. You could be so much more if you entrusted yourself to the teachings of a true master.
The sorcerer purred, the tonal harmony of his voice contrasting sharply with the churning energies of the warp that surrounded them. Around and behind the two, the mists and clouds of the netherworld slowly spun, lighting from within and without with energized streams of purple, red, and blue.
You know? This does look really cool in my opinion. Although I can't unsee what looks like he has a smoking pipe in his nose.
Blue lightning. These demonic discharges echoed with the crack and howls of more than just thunder. But none of those noises or displays could distract the two dark masters from each other.
And I suppose you would be such a master?
Tar asked with a hideous, humorless laugh, his soul-born avatar shifting back into the appearance he currently held in his mortal life.
Do not fool yourself, dog! I would rather extract your teachings from your screaming throat than hear them from your lying, placating lips. Meager words will not shift me, and they will not win you this losing war.
Tar retorted.
I will say that with how things have been going, it does honestly look like Sidious has the advantage. Given how often he's managed to redirect Tar Wyler's own attacks against him, and misdirect him, and the fact that, granted, Tar has inflicted some damage to him, but has never actually managed to score a proper hit on him. Also, that is one of the funny things about the Imperium, where, well, yeah, generally speaking, they're not going to trust us witches or demons. It's kind of funny at times, actually, how while it is that demons will try to mislead you in 40K quite often, and there are times when they tell the truth. But I guess I kind of went off on a tangent. But yeah, let's continue.
The Witch Lord nodded, shrugging.
Spoken truly enough. Yet words are such intriguing devices, aren't they? They can shift the tides of wars even if they cannot win them. Alter the course of destiny even if they cannot alone direct them.
The sorcerer explained.
Why don't we pause this confrontation for the moment and explore the other weapons at our disposal? Our words.
The Inquisitor paused, hesitating at the suggestion.
Unless, of course, you fear my meager words might actually defeat you.
The witch added with the hint of a wizened grin beneath the shadow cloak of his raised hood. Tar Wyler scowled, though he inwardly welcomed the brief hiatus. Although the ways of the Force were unfamiliar to him, the dark sorceries the Republic Warlock wielded were not unlike the psychic abilities known in his galaxy. Tar had underestimated him, had held back and preserved himself from his most potent techniques in a mistaken belief that his superiority over this dark figure would be like that of the other Jedi. Clearly that was not the case, and the moment his foe now offered him would allow the Inquisitor to recuperate his strength and examine his options, even if the tension between them remained thick enough to cut with a monomolecular edge.
As I see it, your potential is squandered, Inquisitor.
The sorcerer resumed when Tar said nothing, his voice a sibilant whisper that carried more than a hint of menace.
You are powerful, so powerful, and yet you falter. You fail.
Tar's face creased.
Your words will find no purchase here. Your lies are meaningless.
The Inquisitor hissed.
You are a
Actually, it just occurs to me in this image, Tara Weller kind of looks like Jeff Dunham's puppet at Walter.
mere road bump, barely a true hindrance. With every moment that passes, I grow closer to my victory. And your pathetic republic draws nearer to its doom. What? You think that because some of your Jedi techniques can stall for time, it means anything?
I have a feeling about two things. One, I have the feeling that Sidious is up to something more than just words here. That there's something he's doing in the background, and that all this is just to keep Tar Weiler distracted, just like how Tar is trying to bide for time to recuperate from the battle. But I also have the impression that just like how Commissar Chadrick had a teleport homer on him, that Tar Weiler might also have a teleport homer as well, because he's still expecting a virus bomb to go off. So he may actually extract himself via teleportation.
The Imperium will not be stopped! I cannot be stopped! Not by false men, or politicians, or your witch warriors, and your precious, weakling Jedi Order!
Tar snarled, his eyes narrowing in tight, channeled hatred, before suddenly being brought up short, his words choking from his mouth. He reached up to his throat, fingers scrabbling at a bind he could not reach. And, eyes wide, he realized his mistake. He had allowed this old man to get into his head, to create through frustration and anger a pin-sized opening in Tar's mental defenses. One which the sorcerer had shattered open, enwreathing Tar in a noose of telekinetic power. But soon it became apparent that Tar had not been the only one frustrated. A spark of uncontrolled anger flared in the witch's eyes. A churning sea suddenly whipped into a tempest behind the fires held within each iris.
Your ignorance is becoming difficult to tolerate, Tar Weiler of the Imperium. So much so that it appears I must begin your education before formality can be observed. Hear this, know this, and remember well your first lesson.
Spoke the Dark Lord, stepping forward, one hand extended out, gesturing as though gripping an invisible throat. Tar struggled, his feet leaving the ground as he was raised off his legs, held by his throat as a torrent of malevolent energy seared him invisibly. He was not only being choked, but crushed, and not just physically. He tried to calm his mind. Duels, even against gods, could be won if their opponent knew how to throw them off balance and into a precarious situation. Tar had been lured into just such a trap, and panicking or losing control to fury or pain would not save him while he was trapped in this vice. Slowly, but surely, Tar began to build his strength again, sliding it like slick fingers under the coils of the witch's constricting might.
I am no Jedi. and my order is not to be compared to theirs.
The sorcerer spat, his voice laced with indignation as Tar gasped and hung in the air before him.
I am the Sith Lord of this galaxy, a master of the dark side of the Force. A lineage distinguished and separate from the simpering idealists you dare to mistake me for. Conflate us at your own peril, for I shall not forgive such ignorance a second time.
The Inquisitor grit his teeth, glaring at the Dark Lord, noting the Sith's fleeting loss of self-control and taking advantage of it.
Your semantics mean little to me. Your labels will be forgotten by history.
Tar growled and gasped past his clenched, shark-like teeth. A bright light surrounded his throat as he pushed with his considerable strength against the Sith Lord. The witch did not seem perturbed by the effort, for no one had ever escaped this technique by their own might, at least not in the Sith's experience. That experience changed as the blue ring of light suddenly seemed to expand and burst all at once, rupturing the telekinetic bond violently and driving a pained hiss from the Sorcerer Lord, his hand cracking and twisting agonizingly. Tarweiler dropped to his feet, extending his hands out in his own brutally powerful telekinetic vice, slamming kilotons of force into his rival, both from above, his sides, his back, and his front. But
Yes, as a psychic nuke to the face is probably recommended by Magnus. Not that Tarweiler would ever accept any recommendations from Magnus the Red.
this creature did not crumple into nothing, did not even fold like Ayla Sakura had. Tarweiler exerted himself more powerfully, veins bulging, but the Sith Lord did not even waver, even as the ground beneath his feet buckled and the tower split and melted around the spot. Tar felt his heart racing, for he was truly exerting himself, atoms smashing in sparks that nearly became nuclear detonations from the pressure he exerted. And yet, there he stood, smiling, unbothered. How was it possible? How powerful was this Sith Lord to shrug off such a force? And then Tar felt it, a hand resting upon the back of his head, fingers extending over his scalp, grasping gently as the illusion he had been trying to destroy vanished before his eyes like a desert mirage brought close. Tar ceased his exerting, heart beating in his ears. When had the Sith Lord slipped away? How had he not noticed, not seen?
You know, deep inside.
The Witch Lord said, voice resonating as if from inside Tar's own head.
That you cannot succeed.
Hissed the Sith Lord. Tar felt sweat building on his bald head between the fingers laid across his pale cranial skin. Was he fast enough? Was he powerful enough to stop him even now? Even gods could be slain and devoured by mere children if conditions were met. This Tar knew well.
But you do not have to stand against me,
whispered the Dark Lord.
You can kneel. You can learn.
Tarweiler struggled to control his breathing, his heart's own hammering, making hearing the words alone difficult. He sighed out a hiss, dropping his hands slowly to his sides, his left falling over a specific part of his robe. There, within an inner pocket, was a device which may yet save him. but he could not reach it directly. Feeling his guts roil with tension, Tar began to speak as his left hand slowly closed around the vague imprint of the object, gradually squeezing it, trying to activate it.
Oh, a teleport Homer?
Betray the Emperor. Betray mankind. Do you think you are the first witch to try to tempt me from the path?
Tar spoke, each word enunciated with cold clarity, challenging the Sith Lord even now, hoping to keep his focus.
Ah, loyalty and duty, such noble concepts, but even they have their price.
The witch whispered, drawing closer, his voice resonant.
You're no stranger to the corruption that eats away at your Imperium. The stagnation, the ineffable sense that it is all crumbling away. With me, you could not only save it, but reshape it, rule it.
That is impossible. The Imperium of Man serves only the Emperor, the Emperor's son and Lord Commander, and the Inquisition which safeguards it. No one man has controlled the Imperium for over 10,000 years. If it is not the Emperor, then it is not possible.
Tar shot back, his voice tinged with an emotion he seldom allowed. Temptation. Tar Weiler felt the weight of the Sith's grasp tighten.
Ah, are you truly too beguiled by the illusion of untouchable divinity?
The Witch Lord murmured, his words seeming to echo.
Even gods can be supplanted, Inquisitor, through the power of the dark side. All things are possible.
As the heretic spoke, Tar felt the object in his pocket pressing against his palm, his fingers squeezing tighter and tighter, sliding over it, looking for the activation rune on its elliptical shape. He internally cursed Eldar finger strength and continued to squeeze as he replied.
Only a fool.
Eldar finger strength? So in this case, so not a teleport Homer, but some piece of Eldari technology then? I wonder what it could be.
Replaces one god for another, believing that his new master will liberate him.
Tar responded, his tone a calculated blend of disdain and reluctant curiosity, as if the very idea nauseated him even while it intrigued.
I am not asking you to trade gods, Tar Weiler. I am asking you to open your eyes and realize that you could become a god, that you deserve to become a god, that anything less would be unworthy of you.
Hissed the Sorcerer Lord.
You make impressive promises, but even large words are cheaply made within the Imperium. I am a lord. I am master of countless.
Tar Weiler began to say.
You are an expendable asset, one which must hide his true power and his right to divinity to appease a culture of backward savages.
The Witch Lord replied swiftly, cutting through Tar Weiler's words.
The Emperor might not even recognize your sacrifice, your unending service, but I would. Under my tutelage, you would wield the sort of power that eclipses what the God Emperor would ever deign to grant you. Search your feelings, Inquisitor Weiler. You know this to be true.
As the Sith's words sought to corrode his loyalty, Tar Weiler felt his fingerprints finally compress the rune on the Eldar jump disc which was concealed in his inner pocket. A sensation like an icy breeze blew over him, tingling his spine. As soon as he released the button, it would activate, likely for the last time.
I have seen the ruin that follows men who trade loyalty for promises of power.
Ah, yes, the continuing aftermath of the Horus Heresy.
Their souls scream in a rightly earned and perpetual damnation.
Tar spat, making sure every syllable carried the weight of irrefutable fact.
I will not be one of them.
Tar released his grip on the device just as he felt the Witch Lord's grasp tighten once more, sinking his nails painfully into Tar Weiler's bald scalp, as if the Sith Lord had sensed the impending turn. The universe folded in on itself for a mere second in Tar Weiler's eyes, and the Inquisitor vanished from the Sith's grasp, reappearing 30 feet away, body smoking somewhat, and 5 shallow, bloody red lines drawn over his skull. Tar turned and grinned, some of the skin around his neck burnt into twisting lines, but not by much. Some blood still dripped from the Sith's fingers as he turned to face the Inquisitor, the Sith's hand still outstretched. Weiler flared his nostrils as he sensed the confusion, and then dark anger of the Sith Lord, whose lips scrunched as he snarled like a predator denied its kill.
Palpatine realizing he's been bamboozled, hoodwinked, deceived, schmeckledorfed.
That was close!
Tar Weiler exclaimed, standing now at a distance, his telepathic barriers fortified once more.
But unlike you, it's not mere tricks and ambition that sustain me. It is conviction.
A shadow flitted across the Sorcerer Lord's eyes.
Conviction. I too have conviction. The conviction required to remold the universe itself. Your parlor tricks will not save you, regardless of what you choose to call them.
The Witch Lord retorted, but the snarl that had accentuated his malevolence was curiously absent now.
Silence! I will hear no more from you. Your words and your lies, they are nothing but distractions. And I do not want to be distracted when I'm pulling your wretched body apart.
Tar Weiler sneered, his physical body gripping his black rapier with renewed vigor.
Come for me, sorcerer! Show me the power of this force you think you control!
Challenged the Inquisitor. Both warriors squared their shoulders, bracing for the next furious exchange. The space between them felt more charged than ever before, like an even larger tempest was about to be unleashed. However,
I will say, I get the impression, that Tar Weiler's self-assuredness will be his undoing, because things were not going all that well for him, in my opinion, in previously. It may have been wiser to cut his losses and run.
just before that storm could break, a new aberration emerged. Out from the shadows of the twisted, broken tower, and behind Tar's back, a skittering mechanism of gears and circuits burst forth. Omni Kraden extended his metallic limbs into a myriad of directions, moving even as he launched himself, body angling to catch the Inquisitor's profile. Before he even understood what had happened, Tar was encased once again, this time not by the forceful grasp of the Sith Lord, but by the cold, unyielding appendages of the Tech Priest. Before the witch could even attempt to counter, Omni Kraden's array of mechanized limbs constricted, pulling Tar into its mist like an arachnid securing its prey. In those same moments, a mechanical whir sounded, whining while an industrial antenna emerged from the centipede-like mechanoid's back, extending skyward and flashing from its bulb-like tip. Clearly, this had been prepared beforehand For while the Sith moved quickly, raising his arms and hands to fire forth a deadly stream of warp lightning, he did not move quite quickly enough. A wave of ethereal energy pulsated from the mechanism the antenna had extended from. A distant teleportarium coming to life, already locked onto the coordinates. The air distorted, waving as if in intense heat, a sickening rainbow of colors flashing from the spot just as the lightning reached them. And then, in a burst of disorienting sound and sensations, both Omnicraden and Tarweiler vanished, leaving behind only the echoes of a battle left unfinished.
Perhaps Tarweiler is more cunning than I thought. I honestly was expecting him to try and resume that fight.
Darth Sidious looked at the spot where his would-be apprentice had stood just moments before. His left fist...
Would-be apprentice? So he really was trying to recruit Tar. I honestly thought that, wondered for a moment if he was really going to try and replace Anakin as his prospective apprentice with Tar. Which, given how powerful Tar is, I can definitely see why it would have been in appealing. I was honestly under the impression previously that the whole recruitment thing was going to end up being a similar case to, well, what he did with Dooku, where the idea is grab someone, use them, and then kill them once their usefulness is at an end.
Clenched, not from the flushed feelings of any defeat, but from the realization that his suddenly disrupted game may yet prove interesting in its own novel way. The Inquisitor had been tested, had been offered power and shown enough of it to whet his appetite. Now, all the Dark Lord needed to do was wait and see if his seedling, so carefully planted, bore fruit. Left alone among the ruins, the Witch Lord of the Galactic Republic, the secret Dark Master of the Jedi Order, saw that he was still not truly alone. Unconscious or dead Jedi yet lay strewn about the corrupted heights of the tower he and Tarweiler had formed in the process of their spiritual and telekinetic battle. Most notably of all, Aayla Secura, now passed from the waking world, yet lived, and Sidious knew she had seen him. Perhaps she had not been able to piece together that he had come as part of the Republic's response, but he doubted even the Jedi were so blind as to not notice his timing. He briefly considered slaying her, here and now, and quickly, before he departed. None would question it. All would lay it at the feet of Tarweiler and the Imperium. Yet he stayed his hand, absorbing the scene fully. A crooked smile slid over his face, seeing that he had planted 2 seedlings here, not 1. If the Jedi threatened his plans, he had ample ways of dealing with her. And if she sprouted and grew the dark fruit he had planted, then she would be worth the risk many times over.
Oh, wait. So after she a case of after she saw what he and Tarweiler are capable of using what the Jedi would think of as the dark side, the idea that seeing how much power they have, and Evan comparing it to how easily Tara Weiler had dispatched all the Jedi around them, it'll make it get more tempting to actually fall to the dark side. Might even rationalize as being necessary to fight against individuals like Tara Weiler.
Sidious was not the greatest tactician in the galaxy, but he was the greatest planner and schemer the stars had ever seen. And already he could sense what role her careful placement might fulfill in the future. And so, standing amidst the debris of a battle interrupted, the Sith Lord resolved to take no more lives. New moves awaited, and his galactic game of Dejeric was far from over, even as the opening gambits met their conclusions. But there were still one or two more moves to play out. This Sidious felt with no uncertainty, his eyes arcing up towards a ship in the far distant sky, so distant as it drifted in orbit that it could not be plainly seen at all. There, in the void, invisible, but so close, darkness was spreading, was taking root, and it was not just there either. Sidious then turned his burning yellow eyes towards the horizon, viewing from his tower the streak of arterial red which had been left behind by a blood-drenched storm. Like a crimson road carved through the spires of Axum's planet-wide city, leading towards a howling tempest which was, like the ship, far beyond his physical view, but well within the reach of his preternatural senses. This was only the first battle, but as with all opening moves, it, once concluded, would set the stage for the rest of the game. Already fates had shifted irrevocably, both in this dimension and in others nearby. There was no going back now, and embracing the power of change, Sidious straightened his robe and began to make his way towards the edge of the tower. He was the master behind this war, the Republic, and the Empire that would rise in its wake. By this, he would shape and control the future through his strength and new, twisting schemes. The galaxy would yet be his, the Dark Lord knew, for over all of the many things he was.
Wait, Sidious, Vader, and Snoke?
From duelist to sorcerer and liar to leader, Darth Sidious was, above all other things, an architect. But not of wood, stone, or steel. No, nothing so mundane. Darth Sidious crafted using only the most powerful and the most potent of building materials. What he gave rise to through his construction would stand the test of time far greater than any single building ever could. For here, in his galaxy, Palpatine was the architect of nothing less than fate, and none would usurpate his glorious design.
Somehow it seems your secret's well protected, and the ghost under your bed so far away. Promises you won't keep and friends rejected. Another stepping stone you're using on your way. Now, brother, for the fun you had, the devil's coming and his mood is bad. So say your prayers, your soul to save. His gift of choosing will dance on your grave. Just to keep the future from the unexpected, you flip another coin.
I will say, this was definitely fun to listen to, and I hope you guys enjoyed it listening / watching this with me. Once again, I highly recommend subscribing to AFanWithTooMuchTime. And he definitely does great work with these. I'm going to watch until the end of the credits in case there's anything at the end. Also, if you guys enjoyed watching with me, I'd appreciate if you like, comment, and subscribe. Also, I'm really looking forward to the next episode when we get to see what happens in regard with that Eversor assassin that boarded the ship. Just scrolling through to see if there's anything else in here other than just credits. Oh, it looks like from the previews that it is just the credits. It's for the supporters. I hope you all have a wonderful night. And until next time, ta-ta!